Record. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome back to the Irish Warriors MMA show. Here we have voice of combat, hands of steel, Phil Campbell with us, Irish Irish mixed martial arts commentator. So Phil, how did you first get involved in mixed martial arts, and what led you to become a commentator?
Oh, that's a multifaceted, multi-layered question you've just asked there. I think like many people of my vintage, I'm 35 years old now. So in and around sort of pre-Ultimate Fighter 1, you're talking in and around 2002, 2003, we had the sort of the rise of the likes of Tito Ortiz, the likes of Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Tim Sylvia, all that real first wave of superstars
Yeah.
of MMA. I remember it was on a Sky channel called Bravo that doesn't exist anymore. So that's how far you're going back. And sort of from there, it actually came up on my Facebook memories a couple of days ago. I actually attended my first ever MMA class 15 years ago. So yeah, that was a wee bit of a face in your own kind of your own vintage and your own mortality there.
And
But yeah, from there,
is that gym still around, or do you still train there, or have
yeah,
you since left
it
the
was
gym?
it was actually it was under Davy Patterson. Davy Patterson is one of the most well-renowned coaches on the island. Um, uh, all of the clubs, I think, in the north of Ireland can be led back to Davy Patterson in some way. And then from there, I then moved. I did a train there for a EFR and a class run through EFR, and then I found my way to IFS in Belfast. Um, I began competing out of there. And to cut a long story short, with regards to the commentary, I was meant to be fighting on a show. I wasn't able to. The fight got cancelled for some reason or another. I can't remember if I was injured or my opponent was injured. And then I was asked if I would do a spot in guest commentary with the great and powerful Mr. Noel O'Keefe, who does not get anywhere near the credit he deserves for sort of the foundations he laid with regards to commentating and MCing in combat sports on this island. And it really, really just took off from there, Dennis, and sort of became this monster that I didn't really have a lot of control over.
That's brilliant. So, what has been the most memorable fight or event that you have commentated in your time of commentating, or even just fights you've seen in person?
Oh, wow. That's a belter question, Dennis. Fair play. With regards to Irish MMA,
Yeah.
one of the biggest moments in my career was Mickey Doran and Keelan Loughran in the Ulster Hall. It was covered by the BBC. It was a huge, huge domestic fight. I remember I did you see it sometimes in boxing. You have the interviewer in the middle, and you have the two combatants sitting either side, kind of like across the table from one another.
Yeah.
I did one of those type of interviews with the two boys, and it was just gold, absolute gold. It was like, the Irish MMA is in a very healthy state without a shadow of a doubt, but there was I don't know, there was almost like a golden age for a little while where you had like some amazing guys coming through.
Yeah.
And that for me, and the Ulster Hall, which is an iconic combat sports venue, again, sitting beside Noel O'Keefe, it was huge. It was a huge moment.
That's quite interesting. And then, can you walk us through a typical fight night from your perspective? What goes into preparing for the event from your part?
Well, when I get to the show, my work's pretty much already done. About a good 80% of my work is already done. In preparation for a show, I'll get the fight card as early as possible from the promoter. And I will contact every fighter on that card whose fight I'm commentating on to get as much information as I can. Again, there's kind of this misconception as a commentator, you just turn up and talk. And that's not the case whatsoever because I've seen people try and do that and fail miserably. There is a huge degree of preparation needed that goes into it, doing stuff like your statistical analysis, breaking down your fight footage. So each card takes me about in and around 30 to 40 hours of work, depending on the number of fights.
And so, would you be going through kind of fighters' fights, just learning about them
Yeah, going
open
through
hours
learning their
before?
yeah, 100%, days and days, like the week of the fight. I'll be breaking down fight footage. What do they do well? What do they maybe have a hole in the game that their opponent can exploit? You know, what is the likely dynamic of the fight between the two guys involved? Just so you can be as prepared as possible. And I think that's something that's entirely necessary in any kind of sports commentary background. But the preparation is key. And if it looks like you can just turn up and talk on the night, that probably speaks to the amount of work that's been done in the background when no one's watching.
Yeah. As a commentator, how do you handle controversial moments or calls within a fight?
With 100% honesty. The only thing I can do is say what I've seen. If for example, if I believe it's a rarity, but if I believe a referee's made a bad call, um, I have to hold them accountable. In the same way that if a fighter, you know, makes a foul or makes a mistake, again, I have to hold them accountable because it would be disingenuous of me not to do
Yeah.
so. Luckily, again, in the scope of Irish MMA, we don't really have that because we have an incredible team of officials here, north
Yeah.
and south.
Oh, we
So
have brilliant
that
guys.
doesn't happen. Yeah, incredible from the likes of Decky Larkin, the
And
likes of
Derek Hickey.
big Derek Hickey, Aaron Wallace. Where we have an incredible team. The stuff that Derek Hickey's doing now. He's
Oh,
finally
fantastic.
starting. He's finally starting to get
Traction
the
he
recognition
deserves.
that he
Yeah,
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, the recognition that he deserves for the work he's done. And then I say in the north we have Decky Larkin and we have Aaron Wallace.
of
But
course.
on international shows, I would work on where perhaps the level of commissioning or the regulation isn't as progressive or isn't as well established as it would be over here. You will see mistakes, and you do have to hold people accountable for mistakes because it's the only way to learn moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What do you think sets Irish MMA fighters apart from fighters from, let's say, France or the UK or the US or China? Or,
Honestly, I think there is fighting's kind of steeped in Irish culture. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah, it is ingrained in the very fabric of our culture and of our social DNA, if you
yeah,
will. Plus, a lot of young fighters are coming from areas where you either clock in and out of a factory for the rest of your life, or you take a chance and you become a fighter. And like, you know, it's plan A for a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? And I think
yeah,
that lends itself to a level of dedication and a level of endeavor when it comes to and a level of commitment when it comes to fighting. And plus, I think Irish fighters naturally are just considerably more engaging, whether that be their fighting style, whether it be their interviews. I don't think there's anything like you think of fighting, you think of the Irish. We're
oh, yeah,
called the fighting Irish for a reason. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's just ingrained in our DNA, mate.
Yeah, I think because kind of during that famine period, we were so poor, we had no money for entertainment. All we could really do
Yeah,
was sit and talk and dance and sing. Right.
exactly.
That was
We're,
all that
we're,
we could do.
we're born storytellers, and
Yeah.
whichever medium you choose to tell that narrative, whether it be the spoken word, whether it be through sport, whether it be through fighting, there's just this lovely we borderline mysticism when it comes to the Irish, and that bleeds right down into our stories, our fighting culture, our sporting culture. You can't help but kind of engage with it.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. How do you see the sport of MMA evolving for over the next 5 to 10 years, both globally and Ireland? Do you see many significant rule
Wow.
changes, or do you see significant officials leaving the sport and new
I
people
think
taking
you're going
their
to
place?
I think like anything, it's going, you're going to see a constant process of evolution. The great thing about MMA is that, as a sport in its current guise, it's only really been around since 1993, since the first UFC. 1993, 1994, 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 20 but yet the means and the expedited rate at which it has developed is incredible. So I think you're going to see, each generation, each new wave, especially of amateur fighter, you're seeing that they are
Getting better
so
and better.
much more, yeah, so much more technical, so much well rounded. Gone are the days of, that one trick pony, that specialist type fighter. Because you
Yeah,
have young lads coming up 18, 19, 20 years old that are in a gym twice a day. They're maybe getting up and doing a 6 a.m. session, either going to college or going to work, finishing work, college, then doing their evening session. You have young kids
yeah,
training like pros nowadays.
yeah.
And when I was an amateur fighter, I was just that, an amateur fighter. But now the only difference when you're looking at a lot of these amateur fights at the very high end, they would be pro fights and any other guys, if not for the gloves and the length of the rounds and the rule set, you know?
Yeah, I had a recent chat with Will Fleury, and he said the same thing. The amateurs back in his day would be amateur, but if you look at the amateurs
Yeah.
today, people who've just gone like Gary Rooney, they would be pros.
Yeah.
Amateur days, the level is just so high from those guys. Gary Rooney, Keith Keogh,
Yeah.
it's brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
even
fantastic.
even on the amateur level, kids like Ben Mahon,
Oh yeah,
that young lad is terrifying, and technically an amateur, but his skill set is incredible. And these are kids that are only really scratching the surface of their potential and what they're capable of. So I do believe when it comes to purely looking from a talent point of view, I believe Irish MMA is in a very, very, very safe place. However, with regards to the likes of legislation, the likes of regulation, we've seen it with Cage Legacy dropping off there, which was a real shame for the Irish MMA
yeah. I
landscape.
thought that was
You
very,
know,
very.
they're Yeah, it's unfortunate because then you're going to have, because I can't think of a prominent Dublin promotion now. I don't think there's a prominent Dublin-based promotion anymore.
There's no prominent promotion in the south in the Republic of Ireland anymore, which is really unfortunate. All the main promotions
Yeah,
are over north or they're in the UK, which is it's
yeah,
awful because it is expensive also to fly to these places and to go and you have to get accommodation and you have to do all this.
yep,
And like you said, it's a lot of young lads coming out and doing this. It's their plan A. It makes
yeah,
it a lot more difficult.
yeah. It is. It's very difficult. I think you've a promotion. You've is it EFC? They're based down and around Cork, I think.
You're right. You're right. I was incorrect on that one.
Yeah.
Then you're right. You're dead right.
So we have EFC, but then again, Cork's a trek for a lot of people. So you really are missing that Dublin based central hub of MMA, which is a shame when you have so many great clubs in and around Dublin.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting with the rule set with the Republic and the North. Up in the North, from 16, there's
Yep.
the headshots allowed, but in the
Yep.
Republic, under 18, there's no headshots. Do you think that if that rule set changes, the skill set and the level will jump quite drastically, or do you think it will still just keep evolving
Well,
at the same
well,
rate?
what you saw was, for all the rule sets that were established in the South and for the agreed upon principle of everyone, from everyone to instill those rules, you still had coaches sending their 16-year-old fighters up the north. Do you know what I mean? To get that
Right.
ground and to get that experience. So were those rules being instilled just to be seen to be doing so that a government could look at them and say, oh, well, aren't they good? Aren't they bowing to the pressures being put on them by a government or by X, Y, and Z? But yet fighters were like the Southern fighters were still going up north from the age of 16 up to get a good grounding in unified rules MMA.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What challenges do you think MMA still faces in terms of mainstream acceptance and growth?
Well, just that, you've hit the nail on the head. It's mainstream acceptance. You have, Conor McGregor, love him or hate him, did an incredible job for the
Yeah,
promotion of the sport and the furtherance of it in the public eye. But until you have um, overarching island-wide government acceptance and recognition
yeah.
as a sport, you were still having kids going to the IMAFs that have to fund it themselves.
Yeah,
Do you know
you
what I mean?
always
Because they're
see
not able.
coming up to kind of August, all those kids,
Yeah,
because it's not recognized as an official sport. So there's no funding
yeah,
whatsoever.
that's and that's crazy. If you think about it, these kids have been selected to represent their country in combat sports, again, Ireland's steeped in combat sports history. They've been chosen. They're considered the best of the best to represent Ireland at that level, and
Yeah.
yet they can't get the government to support it. Until that happens, that's going to be the biggest stumbling block. And I do believe that we're not a million miles away from it, but it still needs to happen, Dennis.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting if you look at a place like Ukraine, where if a child wins gold in the Worlds, the Europeans, I think they get what's equivalent of 20 grand for their family, and then their coach gets another 20 grand, which
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was insane to me. I remember hearing it from a friend in training, and I just sat there like, what the hell? That would never even
yeah.
be thought of in Ireland. Like,
No, you'd be lucky. You'd be lucky to get the back page of the local paper over here.
yeah, oh yeah, oh 100%. Yeah, and that would be if you were an adult. If you were a young fella doing it, there'd be nothing. Yeah.
No,
Um.
no. But
So
it's unfortunate.
it is. It is. It's very sad. You've been around the sport for a very long time. What advice would you give?
Not too long, you cheeky bastard. Fuck me.
What?
I'm only 35, kid. Calm yourself.
What advice would you give to someone aspiring to follow in your footsteps, who wants to commentate, who wants to do what you do, who maybe doesn't like the fighting aspect, but still loves to watch fights, still loves to talk about them?
Yeah, I do believe that for the sake of authenticity to be involved in combat sports, the commentary side, you need to at least train, you know, because I think it would be and this is just my personal opinion, but I think it would be disingenuous of me to say fighter A needs to do something or be critical of a fighter during a fight, having not been in that position myself.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I believe that if you want to get involved in commentary, you need to train. You need to understand the positions and the biomechanics of it rather than just looking at it. So that would be the first protocol. And then beyond that, what I used to do is I watch fights on my own when I was a kid, and I would commentate on them myself. You know, I also work as a judge. I don't know if you know that, but I also work as a judge. So I would always, when I'm watching fights on my own, I would also score fights. So little things like that, just to keep you sharp, just to keep you on point. Watch as many different types of fights as you can. You know, we have a tendency now just to watch the UFC. And if you're just watching the UFC, you're only going to get a particular style of commentary, which is great. Joe Rogan and the likes of Michael Bisping, Daniel Cormier, John Anik, they're absolutely fantastic. However, if that's all you're watching, that's all you're going to absorb kind of by the process of osmosis, if you will. Now, if
Yeah.
you're watching different organizations, you're seeing different styles of commentary, different inflections, different ways that professionals go about it. It gives you such a more a broadened view of what commentary is rather than just the stylized American style.
Yeah. What do you think in order to commentate at a high level, you would need to at least do even an amateur fight? Or do you think just training alone is enough
I
to
think
commentate?
I think training. I think at the bare minimum, I would advocate yes, take a fight. Yes, take a fight so you know what it's like to be punched in the face in a competition type setup because nothing can replicate that. You know yourself, Dennis. You're a practitioner yourself. You know yourself. You can't. You know, training day in day out with your training partners is completely different to being in there against somebody who you don't know who wants to win the fight as much as you want to win the fight.
Yeah.
So, in order to really get an understanding of the psychology of the fight, not just the biomechanics, but I would advocate at least having one amateur fight in a particular discipline to really be able to empathize with what the fighter goes through.
Yeah. Okay. Now a bit of an off-topic MMA related question. I remembered you were a very big Batman fan. What do you think of the new Penguin show?
Love it. Absolutely inspired. So it
Good
is, Dennis.
man. Good man.
I Where you see the Batman, I'm sure you're very much aware. It follows on a week after the events of the Batman.
Yes, and it's going to lead
Um,
into the next one only a couple of days after.
yeah, and the Batman is perhaps my favorite Batman movie so far. I thought Robert Pattinson was incredible. But now with Colin Farrell, I think Colin Farrell in that movie had less than 20 minutes screen time. But now, over the course of 8 hours, over 1 hour episodes for an 8 episode stretch, you're really doing a deep dive into the character,
Yeah.
which is incredible. And it has such a lovely sort of detective noir gangster vibe to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like I say, Colin Farrell's absolutely fucking inspired. So yes, mate, I'm very much enjoying it.
I love seeing Irish actors in positions like that, especially with things that I enjoy. I think it's brilliant. Have you seen
Yes,
the
yes,
upcoming that they're developing a movie for Bane and I think it's Deadshot or Deathstroke?
yes,
Sorry.
yes. That'll be interesting to see how they do that. Whether it's going to
Yeah,
be like a almost like a buddy movie, like we saw with
yeah,
Deadpool
like
and
a but
Wolverine,
or Hobbs and
or
Shaw
will
or something like that. Yeah,
yes, or will it maintain that gritty kind of noir move? Now I think that's going to be set more in the James Gunn universe as
I think
opposed to the
so.
Matt
Yeah,
Reeves.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, any kind of Batman related content, I'm here
Mm.
for it
Oh, same.
all
I'm
day,
the
mate.
same. I'm the same. I'm the same. And we'll wrap this up. Are there any particular fighters, events, or organizations that you would love to either commentate over or work with in the future?
Anyone that pays me. No, yes, obviously, again, like I'm very, very, very lucky that I've had an opportunity to call most of the major organizations on this island, and if I haven't been able to, it's usually because I've been booked to do other things. But you have organizations like I'm very fortunate, like I commentate with Brave Combat Federation who are doing
Yeah,
great things. But
yeah.
then I also see the I've also worked with the likes of Hexagon, but I see great work being done by the likes of Eras in France. I'd love a crack at the PFL. I would absolutely love a crack at the PFL,
I'd say they'll
especially
come
when they're
back at
doing
some point.
shows.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
definitely come back. I'd love
especially
to see you on that. You or Paul Brown would be fantastic.
yeah, yeah. I would have loved an opportunity. Just because I believe I could do a job there. You know, I'm not arrogant in my abilities, but I'm confident in my ability.
Yeah,
I do believe, and I say this without trying to sound like a dick. I do believe I'm one of the best commentators in the world outside of the UFC.
mm,
And I would love a crack at a big show like the PFL. But if something like that never happens again, I'm so fortunate and so lucky to do the work that I do, traveling internationally, working with the majority of the Irish promotions. Because there is, an organization has to entrust you to do the work that you do, and you're essentially crafting the narrative of the fights or crafting the narrative of the show. So
yeah.
no, as long as I get to keep doing what I'm doing, make a living at it, pay my bills, I'm pretty happy, mate.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Phil. I'm very, very grateful. Thank
No,
you for your time.